Okay, so we're now live on YouTube live streaming. I'm just going to try to bring in a member of council that is wanting to join by phone. Just bear with me. Okay, I think we're ready. We do have a quorum. Councillor Hines will join us momentarily by phone and possibly video in a short time. I don't see Councillor Evans present. Actually, he just came in. Just give us one more moment.
Okay. Okay. There he is.
Hey, we'll turn it over to you, Mayor Eady.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order and we'll ask for the calling of the roll, please.
Thank you. Mayor Eady,
Present.
Mayor Reeve Eman,
Present.
Councillor Koulis, Councillor Evans,
Present.
Councillor Hines, Councillor Jemison, Councillor Sydney.
Present.
You have a quorum, Mayor Eady?
Thank you. Is there any declaration of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Okay, hearing none. The first motion this evening is that Staff Sergeant or Sergeant Ken Key, Municipal Policing Specialist on behalf of the Ontario Provincial Police, appear before council to present the OPP renewal options for the town of Renfrew. At the same time, I'd like to welcome Inspector Don Ferguson and also another OPP representative, Mr. Steve Bosa. So I need a mover, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Koulis. We'll turn it over to Sergeant Ken Key to give his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm just going to share my screen, at least attempt to do so. I'm going to, yeah, I got the selections here. So just bear with me as I bring this up. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Hopefully. Good. Excellent. And just bear with me here for a sec. Okay. All right, so good evening, Your Worship, Reeve, members of council, municipal staff, and everybody watching online. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Kenneth Key, and I'm a sergeant that works out of the Ontario Provincial Police Municipal Policing Bureau at General Headquarters in Orillia. And again, with me tonight are representatives from Renfrew OPP Detachment. Just so everybody's aware, I can certainly speak to anything related to costs, cost recovery. If there's any sort of operational concerns or questions that do come up, I'll defer to the inspector and Sergeant Bosa for follow-up, as they can speak directly to the local detachment and operational concerns and questions of that nature. So a little introduction about myself. I'm currently in my 25th year with the OPP, and I've worked in a variety of roles, including general patrol, major collision investigations, fraud investigations, quality assurance. I spent actually a fair degree of time in the Ottawa area, and so I'm quite familiar with that area, Renfrew area as well. Our Bureau, just a bit of a background, our Bureau is primarily responsible for managing municipal policing agreements with various stakeholders. And upon request made to municipalities by the Ministry of Solicitor General, we develop OPP municipal policing contract proposals. We also oversee the transition process in those circumstances where municipal police services disband and the OPP assumes responsibility for providing those services. Many of you may be aware, Orangeville, we're currently in the process of transitioning them to the OPP come October 1st. Shelburne has just decided to transition to the OPP, and we're working through that transition right now. So that is that's also what we get involved with as well. So moving on, just to give you, sorry about this, I'm going to go back to here. Sorry, the outline just for this evening. And again, I just want to take probably about 10 to 15 minutes to give you a bit of a background. I'll speak a little bit about OPP annual expenditures. I'll talk about the OPP billing model, which is the method for cost recovery for providing OPP municipal policing services to municipalities across the province. I'm going to speak to cost recovery trends, particularly as it relates to the town of Renfrew. Also, I'll cover the provincial level as well as the local municipal level. I'll talk about annual billing statements, and I'll speak to the actual renewal process that will be involved. And I'm sure there's probably some questions in relation to new legislation coming out, the Community Safety and Policing Act, and OPP detachment boards. I will touch a little bit on that. I'm going to warn everybody right now that unfortunately we do not have a lot of information that we can provide for you other than what most people do know based on legislation that's been provided. Again, we're waiting for the Ministry of the Solicitor General to come out with regulations to develop and set out the parameters for OPP detachment boards, but unfortunately we are still in a holding pattern, and we really don't know much more information than what everybody else would know. But again, I'll speak to the basics of that and try to answer questions related to that as well. So these figures are based on OPP reconciled costs for 2018 and 2019 actuals. And this pie chart provides an illustration of where the money is allocated to and what services the OPP provides. So looking at the right side of your screen there, you see the provincial and specialized responsibilities section, and that's in the gray. 64% makes up our mandated provincial responsibilities, which includes such areas as traffic safety, investigations, intelligence, and specialized response teams. Again, that is services that are provided at the provincial level, and those services are offered to municipalities locally, but they're not, the cost for providing those services are not taken directly from the municipalities. Those services, again, are still offered though. So also,
I
yes.
apologize for interrupting. We don't
No
see
problem.
your presentation doesn't seem to be advancing. We're still on the
Okay.
opening slide. So
My apologies. I will try to see. Okay, sorry. I just see here a little yellow screen is paused. Let me see if I can resume share. How's that? Okay, let's carry on. My apologies for this. Let's start again. How's that slide? Everybody see that?
yeah, that's good now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I apologize. They must have obviously had a few more clicks. Okay, so yeah, again, just to get back, again, in the gray there, you can see the provincialized specialized responsibilities section. And then on the left side, again, the blue section, that is what you would normally see, the local detachment area, those services that are provided at the local detachment area. That's in the blue, and that's what's recovered from our municipalities that we police in the province. Everybody sees that slide?
I do,
Yes, good, okay, good. So just to give you a bit of a background to the OPP billing model and development. So municipalities policed by the OPP fall into one of two categories. So they either have a formal contract as per Section 10 of the Police Services Act, which is the case in the town of Renfrew, or there's no contract and policing services are provided under Section 5.1 of the Act. So prior to 2014, the method of billing for each of these categories was different. It was complicated, quite frankly, and difficult to explain and based on many complicated measures. It also led to a wide disparity of policing costs throughout the province of Ontario. You'd have some municipalities that were paying less than $50 per household for policing, and as opposed to others who were paying well over $800 per household. So this diagram depicts the development of our model with its deep roots in engagement sessions and consultations with ministries, agencies, associations, and our municipalities. So to my left here, each line represents a municipality and how much they were paying in 2014 prior to the model. It's a representation, so dollars being the scale from top to bottom. So you can see how the gap or disparity has been addressed for the implementation of the billing model. To address transparency, reports have been created, and these are these annual billing statements. They come out in October, and those provide a detail of costs, estimated costs that would be recovered for the next year. So for 2021, again, the annual billing statements we expect to come out quite shortly, and they will provide an estimated cost that will be recovered for next year. And then there are reconciliation of certain items that are made in 2022 when the year 2021 is completed. So again, the important thing at the top to look at and to remember is that the billing model is provincially focused. This means it focuses on all the municipal policing the OPP does and provides in the province. So we recover costs from each municipality for services provided, and those costs are estimated, as I mentioned, in prepared statements that come out in the fall prior to the billing year. Base services is, in essence, this is how we achieve the cost for equitable share policing services. It's a per property cost that municipalities pay based on the number of properties in their boundaries. For 2020, I believe the per property base cost is set at $183, and that changes from year to year depending on data collected. And this rate is the same for all OPP policed municipalities. Activity covered in the base services cost include legislative requirements, proactive policing, training, administration, and supervision. The second category you see there, calls for service, is specific to each municipality and is allocated based on their individual usage level. So a municipality that has more calls for service will generally pay more in this area than one with fewer calls for service. So while base and calls for service are the two main categories in the billing, there are some additional costs that we recover for, and you can see at the bottom ribbon of that slide there, additional costs, and that is depending on each municipality and what applies to each municipality. So, for example, those municipalities who do not have a court within their jurisdiction would not be responsible for paying court security. Again, under legislation, it's mandated for municipalities to cover the court security costs for courts within their jurisdiction. Moving on to the next slide. So this chart provides a breakdown of the total province-wide cost recovery for OPP municipal policing in all our OPP police municipalities. Again, this is at the provincial level. So right now for 2020, we are recovering approximately $210 million for base service. $162 million is being cost recovered for providing calls for service. And then other costs as applicable fits into that $38 million, and again, at the provincial level. This slide shows the cost recovery trends since 2015, once again, at the provincial level. The blue line represents total cost recoveries, including all elements of the billing model. That's including base and calls for service and those additional costs as applicable. The green bar, that shows the average cost per property based on all the municipalities we police in the province. So as you can see there for 2020, it's the average cost is $358 per property. As you see, the billing model since inception from 2015 onwards has been relatively stable throughout at the provincial level. This gets down to the specifics for the town of Renfrew, and incidentally, this information is available for anybody to access. I'm actually one of the last, I think the second last slide. I'm going to provide some links to you, and anybody can go on to the opp.ca website and access information. So for all the municipalities that we police in the province, we'll have a breakdown of these costs and the cost trends since 2015 for every municipality. So you can go in and do comparisons, but anybody can access that information. So again, I'll provide those links further on in the presentation. So this chart shows the cost trends for the town of Renfrew since the inception of the billing model in 2015. So you can see at the top Renfrew's cost per property, and that's seen in blue in comparison to the, in green in comparison to the average cost per property, which is in blue. You can see they're slightly above average all across compared to the average cost per property. Now I'll say that's not unusual in the case of the town of Renfrew. Because it's generally more of an urban setting, you're going to find generally an increased calls for service in comparison to rural municipalities. And so a lot of the drivers of those higher costs tend to be calls for service. And again, in those urban areas, you'll see that slightly higher cost in terms of calls for service being recovered. And then there's a further breakdown in the bottom half of the chart below, year by year, the cost recoveries. This is just a copy of the annual billing statement for the town of Renfrew, and this is actually for this year, for 2020. So again, for 2021, that will be coming out very shortly. But again, just to explain, if you happen to come upon this documentation, and just to give you a bit of a background and a breakdown of how the costs are outlined. So you can see at the top here, base service, and the property counts are indicated, and that is based on MPAC data that is provided that we access. You apply that, the 2020 base property cost of $183 brings you to the total cost for base services of $777,000. Below that, the calls for service costs, you can see that the total for all municipalities, again, is estimated at under $162 million. And again, going back to the explanation of a proportionate share that each municipality pays for their usage for calls for service, in essence, we calculate based on the data, activity data of the previous 4 years, and that gives us a percentage of 0.6717%. And that translates into just over $0.093 million for cost recovery for calls for service costs. And they simply break that down into a per property cost for ease of calculation. And then the additional costs you can see as applicable: overtime, court security, prisoner transportation, and accommodation and cleaning. Gives you those estimated costs. And then there's always an adjustment that's made based on reconciliation items, which brings the grand total at the bottom there of $1.9 million, with the monthly billing amount indicated at $165,000. That gives you a bit of an explanation of the first page. And I'll just move on and show the second aspect to this. And this provides a breakdown of the calls for service billing summary report. So based on the information provided on the first page, again, you can get more detailed information in terms of the calls for service data and how we come up with that cost estimate. So this page again shows the billing summary for calls for service, which outlines more detailed information. Past this page in the package will actually give you a breakdown of individual calls for service based on those calls for service billing work groups. The calculation works basically by looking at the 4-year rolling average of activity data. And the main reason behind a 4-year rolling average is to allow for cost stability. Some municipalities do ask, well, why can't we just simply look at the actual calls for service per year and be charged on that? And that is in theory quite possible, but the problem is if you happen to experience a year where it's quite busy and you have a lot of calls for service, then municipalities could be potentially facing quite a hefty bill, and the bills would be quite steep. So again, we take the 4-year average of data, and that primarily is used to ensure cost stability, is really what it comes down to. So for 2020, we look at the calls for service data from 2015 to 2018, and that determines a 4-year average for calls for service in those 9 different billing work groups you can see on the left-hand side there. Each of those billing work groups has a number of calls that are billable and categorized into those work groups. So note that all calls for service are not necessarily billable to municipalities. There are quite a number of calls for service that are not billable and that are not factored into the calls for service cost. So I'll give you an example. A question does often come up: what happens if somebody calls in a complaint, a speeding complaint on a local road? Is that then assessed as a calls for service cost against towards the municipality? And that's not the case. That is considered a base service aspect, and again, that wouldn't be a call that we would charge back to the municipality. So we take the 4-year average calls for service counts and we apply a time standard, which is based on 4 years of activity data, to come up with a total weighted time for each billing work group seen in column C. This time is totaled, then applied to the total provincial hours to give that percentage of 0.6717%. And this percentage is then applied to the total calls for service cost of 162 million for 2020, which is what is being recovered from municipalities, again, across the province. Just to give you a bit of an outline as to the actual process, it's essentially quite simple. What will happen is, in the next few weeks, I will be getting, and actually all municipalities will be getting, a copy of the annual billing statement for 2021. I'll receive it as well. And from that, I will create an actual contract proposal, and I will send that off to the municipality. Essentially, it comes down to a decision that the municipality has to make, based on a number of things, but essentially it's a decision between continuing on and renewing a Section 10 contract. The alternative is to decline that and revert to a Section 5.1 policing arrangement. If there is a decision to renew the contract, the terms are defined as anywhere from 3 to 6 years for a contract. Unfortunately, we don't have much leeway in that. That's built into the legislation. So right in there are the terms. So we can't, for example, we can't look at a 1 or 2 year contract. The minimum is 3, the maximum is 6. So if there is a decision to renew, a bylaw would have to be passed, and then we would arrange for a signing of the contract. Again, just want to touch a little bit about the Community Safety and Policing Act. So for OPP policing, what will happen eventually is that we will revert to no contracts, in essence, for municipalities. Basically, the idea behind it is that I believe the ministry was trying to eliminate, in essence, the distinction between Section 10 municipalities and Section 5.1 municipalities. There is sometimes some misinformation, perhaps, where some municipalities believe if they do have a contract, they're kind of getting the extra service or better service. That is simply not accurate. Regardless of whether you're a Section 10 municipality or 5.1, the service delivery is the same. There are some differences. In a Section 10 situation, you do, by legislation, you're required to have a police services board. In a 5.1, there's no provision for that. Very often in situations, in those non-contract 5.1 situations, detachment commanders do have community policing advisory councils, which in essence act similar to a PSB, but again, it's not legislated as such. In a Section 10 contract, again, municipalities do have the option of considering perhaps contract enhancements, as well as some more opportunities for grants. So that are, in essence, are the differences between 10 and 5.1 right now. But as it stands right now with the new legislation, there will be no contracts in place. There will be revisions to provide contract enhancements individually to municipalities under established agreements. In essence, it really comes down to two choices: either continuing to be policed by the OPP and joining an OPP detachment board. There is an option as well if municipalities choose to form their own board or join another board, in essence joining or creating another municipal policing service, or having another municipal policing service come in to provide the municipal policing. again, speaking to OPP detachment boards, I can't really provide you with much more details as to the makeup, how that's going to look. I know that it is a very hot topic, understandably so. But as I say, we are waiting for the regulations to come out from the ministry to define how those boards will be laid out. And I simply don't have a lot of information right now as such to provide you. Just want to draw your attention again with those links to helpful online resources. Again, speaking to earlier to the information provided for all the municipalities we police in the province, looking at cost histories, and as well, we do have a Twitter page that provides some timely information. Other than that, from my perspective, that is it for my presentation, but I'm happy to answer as many questions or any comments. If I don't know the answer, I'll get back to you for sure, but I'll do my best to provide that information.
Hey, Mr. Keek, if you wouldn't mind taking your slide off the screen so that we can see everybody.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions, council? Okay. Hearing none. Any comments from Inspector Ferguson?
Nothing for me. I think Sergeant Key has covered everything from our perspective with regards to the contract renewal.
Thank you very much. Again, one last chance. Any comments from council? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the presentation? I'm sorry, Treasurer O'Reilly.
If I may, Your Worship, question to Sergeant Key. I guess I'm curious then as to the timing of the regulations with respect to the police contracts and the timing of or the length of a contract. I guess once the regulations come in place, it doesn't matter if you've got a 3, 4, 5, or 6 year contract at that point in time. Is that correct?
Correct. In essence, the contracts would be voided throughout the province. So, yeah.
And is it anticipated that that's going to be forthcoming in the next 12 or 24 months, or is that?
Yeah, for lack of
try to determine how I make a recommendation as to how length of a contract the town should enter into at this point in time.
Yeah. For lack of a better term, it's kind of the million dollar question right now. I've heard possibly the end of next year. It could be the year after that. It's simply hard to say. Again, this is again a ministry-driven process that we're kind of at the mercy of. The timelines. Obviously, given the circumstances with COVID, that has impacted things obviously throughout. So whether that would have any impact of delaying it, it's possible.
But the key is that regardless of the length of contract, the regulations would supersede that, and we all come under the new regulations then anyway.
Correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Anyways, thank you very much for your presentation, and you keep yourself safe.
You too as well. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, the next motion thing, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held electronically on September the 8th, 2020 be adopted as printed. Mover, please. Rebimo, second by Councillor Sidney. Okay. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay, that the communication from the Township of North Glengarry dated September 14th, 2020, requesting that Ontario provide funding to increase full-time positions in place of casual and part-time labor in long-term care homes, and that the Ministry of Long-Term Care acts to regularly inspect our long-term care homes be received and endorsed. Over, please. Emo, seconded by Councillor Hines. Again, any questions or comments on this? Revimo.
If I may, the association, and I'm not going to say the name because I think I'll get it wrong, but the association has been making that request, as has ONA. and CUPE. Both ONA is the Ontario Nurses Association, and CUPE is the represents the frontline day-to-day workers. They've all been making that request. They've been sounding an alarm for approximately 4 months now, suggesting that they're not feeling comfortable with the level of funding which would allow them to provide a level of care that is advisable for people in long-term care homes. So this is not new, and I think if you look through the media, there is a lot fuller explanation. But the government did one really good thing was when they banned multiple workplaces where they told people to make a choice. So that was very good, but that's left shortages because of that, because prior to that, PSWs and some nursing staff are working in 2 or 3 different locations. That has left, once they had to pick, that's left some gaping holes. And if now with the new regulations, if one partner or a child tests positive or has symptoms, and most local health units are asking that people stay home until they get a result, that's going to further cause a problem. So it's a motion that's well worth supporting.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Councillor Hines.
Worship, I'm in support of this, but I'm just wondering that it says that the Long-Term Care Act to regularly inspect the homes. I hope that is going to be annually, not just regularly. Just a comment.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Oh, carried. The next motion on the table is from Ellis Keeping Company to close down a street or two for it was a Harvest Homecoming. I got an email on that and they have canceled that, so that motion won't be brought to the table. Next one, that the representatives from Lapine Apartments appear before council to speak to their application for site plan approval for Lapine Apartments Phase 1. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Cooless. We now asked
Yep.
Mr.
I'm just
Romer.
gonna bring them into the meeting right now. Just bear with me.
Yep.
Good evening, Don and Francis. Can you hear us?
Hello? Yes, we've just unmuted, so can you hear us?
Yes, we hear you just fine. So I'll turn it back over to Mayor Eady.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome this evening. Looking forward to your presentation. Who will be giving the presentation?
Well, Mayor Eady, we don't have a lot to present other than to express our support for the staff report and the site plan agreement.
Could you speak up just a wee bit? I'm not sure about everybody else. I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay. We don't have a lot to present other than expressing our support for the staff report and the site plan agreement that's before you. Francis may have some additional comments, but we just wanted to express our appreciation to staff. We've had our first pre-consultation meeting on this project only 14 months ago, and we're already talking to you about a site plan agreement. So there's no such thing amongst developers as the expression fast enough, but I can say in my experience that this is one of the quickest approval processes I've experienced, if not the quickest. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
The only thing like they had is, we're waiting for commence work notice and fire off. We're ready. Let's put this show on the road.
Okay. So if that's all you gentlemen have to say, the next motion is the planner Withers will be giving a report. I'm certainly, yeah, I'm sure you want to stay and watch that, of course. So anyways, thank you very much, and we can leave room at the end for questions if there need be. Okay. So all in favor of that presentation? Carried. Okay, the next motion being the Planner Weathers report dated September 17th, 2020 concerning site plan approval for Lepine Apartments Phase 1 be received. And further that Renfrew Town Council, subject to a favorable legal opinion from the town's legal counsel, approve Lepine Apartment request to reduce the amount of required security to $50,000 together with a performance bond, and the council delegate authority to staff to determine the acceptable form of security. And further that Renfrew Town Council support the deferral of payment of development charges to the full building permit stage for each building of the development. And further that Renfrew Town Council acknowledge that the proposed Phase 1 works are not eligible for development charges credits in accordance with the town's local servicing policy. Need a mover for that, please. Councillor Cool, second by Reeve Emo. Turn over to Planner Withers for his report, please. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you very much, Mayor Eady and members of council. It's I got to say, it's a pleasure to bring this project forward to council this time. It's been certainly a pleasure for staff to work with the group at Lepine. They're very sophisticated in the way that they prepare their materials and do business. They're obviously very seasoned and have done this several times before. So it's been quite pleasant, actually. They know the drill, and it's been relatively painless, actually. So we're very glad to be able to bring this forward at this time. And certainly this has been a pretty quick turnaround. And again, it works both ways. We can find a lot of times, we can be as quick as we want to at the staff level. But then, a lot of times when we send it out, it sits around for a little bit. And we just found that hasn't happened with Lepine. So it's been great. So Mayor Eady's reviewed the recommended motions. They're fourfold this evening. So we're recommending provisional approval of the site plan for Phase 1, being the first building, 63 units and associated parking, subject to dealing with a few minor, I'm going to say relatively minor details that are outstanding. We're requesting council's concurrence with respect to requested security, alternative security arrangements for the project, specifically a letter of credit in the amount of $50,000 to be retained until the full project is complete. So all 7 buildings, including landscaping, together with a performance bond. And I'll just note, it's not entirely clear in the wording of the recommendation, but in the wording of the attached site plan agreement, we're recommending the performance bond be for all works, so on-site and off-site. The deferral of payment of development charges, we're recommending council support that to the full building permit stage for each building in the development. And further, the council acknowledged that the Phase 1 works in staff's opinion aren't eligible for development charges credits in accordance with the town's local servicing policy. So those are the recommendations. They're a bit, they're a little heavy, but hopefully they're relatively clear. I'll maybe just briefly describe the proposal that's before council, and then just some of the issues that we looked at and what's outstanding. So as noted, the proposal is for Phase 1 of the proposed development, and I'll just turn your attention to Appendix B of the staff report. It contains the master plan for the property, together with the phasing plan showing the location of phase 1. So the second drawing of that report shows the phase 1 lands. It's the building at generally the northwest corner of the site, closest to 8th Street. And the idea here is that we think this is a good spot to start because it's going to get all the dust out of the way for the 8th Street residents with the first building and hopefully provide some buffering for subsequent phases. Associated landscaping and servicing, there's going to be a temporary storm pond at the rear, generally in the location of the building that's furthest to the rear of the site, and that's reflected in the servicing drawings. And then in the fullness of time, it'll be replaced by a permanent storm pond, shown generally as that clover-shaped pond in the center rear of the property. So that's phase 1. That's what's being proposed. The master plan is shown in the site plan agreement just for illustrative purposes, but in reality, that'll be dealt with through a subsequent site plan amendment. And hopefully we can deal with the rest of the development and only, hopefully one amendment ideally, and if not, not much more than that. We just need a bit of time to work out some of the additional details, but certainly not insurmountable and not much trouble to do that. So in terms of the issues we're dealing with, so site plan, we dealt with the zoning in March 24th. The site was rezoned. So we have 2 site-specific zones on the property. We have the R2, E18A and B. The B zone was for the middle of the property for additional height, if you'll recall. So there's two apartment buildings that are step up to 5 stories and need some additional height. The zoning dealt with the reduced parking ratio, accessible parking, and the minimum distance separation in the industrial zone. In terms of department and agency comments, so we had comments from the fire chief. We're just dealing with some technical matters related to the ladder truck and loads and that kind of thing. Fire water volumes and that kind of thing. Director of Parks and Recreation is going to be taking the submitted appraisal and parkland dedication amounts to the rec committee. The appraised value is $565,000. The property was previously purchased for $500,000 in November of last year. So that represents, over a 10% increase just in the last year alone, reflective of obviously the market and the rezoning. So the dedication amount would be $28,250 based on 5% of the value of the property. We're working through engineering technical comments. The majority of them have been dealt with to this point. We don't really have any concerns. It's just working out some details. Renfrew Hydro has a line at the back of the property. It's going to be dealt with through an easement. No public comments because site plan that gets dealt with through the zoning process. So that's when the consultation was addressed through council's decision. Just on some planning matters. So they submitted a landscape plan. Generally, it looks good. It's got, obviously, as you'd imagine, quite a bit of deciduous and coniferous trees proposed. Some smaller scale foundation plantings. Quite a bit of sod. It'll be an attractive design once everything's matured up. The 8th Street interface there, which is pretty important from a landscape perspective. There'll be a chain link fence with privacy slats. There'll be 2 rows of conifers. So as those grow up, there'll be increasing degrees of privacy. So that's good. And that's what we're looking for. The site servicing report, we've dealt with all the outstanding matters on that. We're happy with it. The lighting plan, we're happy with that. They're using full cutoffs, directional lighting. We just a small comment about just relocating one standard to deal with some light trespass, and that was addressed. So no further issues there. Transportation impact study was submitted, quite detailed. No warrants were met for intersection improvements based on the study findings. Noise monitoring. So that was kind of circled back on that and did a bit more detailed evaluation of the actual noise impacts. So they set up noise monitors for a week, and it was determined that and daytime and nighttime monitoring was undertaken. It was determined that noise levels actually on the site are going to be in line with acceptable noise levels based on the MOE. So so there's no specific requirement for things like triple glazing or anything like that. The consultants are satisfied that noise is going to be acceptable at the buildings. What else can I mention here? Obviously, there's going to be some construction activity in the right of way. There's going to be a reconstruction to an urban cross section on the south side of the street for Barna Boulevard. And we're mostly satisfied with those details. We're just working on a few more engineering details on that front. There'll be a pedestrian connection to the Millennium Trail. So the multi-use path kind of stubs off at 8th Street, and we're going to have a sidewalk connection along the south side of Barnet that'll go to the intersection of 8th Street, and then we'll bring it across with the crosswalk. And so that's good. There'll be active transportation connections there. So in terms of securities, so the applicant submitted a request for an alternative securities and reduction of development charges, and that's included with this report as Appendix D. And the applicant goes into some detail in terms of the rationale for the requested reduction. The developer is obviously quite experienced and knows what they're doing, and they're confident in this project. They're retaining reputable contractors to do the work. So we don't have any concerns in that regard. I think what we need to ensure at the staff level and in our recommendations to council is that we're accounting for, you know, the worst case scenario, and certainly we would fully expect that doesn't come to pass. But we certainly do need to make sure that there is something there in the event you know, something happens. I always say, in the case the moon hits the earth, you just never know, right? And anything could happen, and we certainly hope it doesn't. So we're certainly supportive of an alternative framework for securities. So the request is typically we would be looking for 100% of the construction cost estimates for both on-site and off-site works. The cost estimates approach $1 million for phase 1 of this project for both works. Obviously, that's quite a bit of money, and I compare it to the dialysis lab that the hospital did a few years back, and that wasn't even $1 million, and that was a pretty big project. So $1 million is a lot of money, and so you know, there's some consideration for an alternative framework just to provide some additional liquidity to the project so you can get it in the ground and get it done. So the request is for a $50,000 letter of credit, along with a performance bond, and council will recall that a similar approach was taken for Hunter Gate. For the Hunter Gate subdivision, a performance bond was used. In the event that it needs to be executed, our preference is that the bond be between the owner and the town, just to simplify matters. We understand the proposal from the applicant was a bond with the contractors, and our recommendation as staff is to have it with the owner, just so we're not chasing people in the event we do have to execute that bond, and we certainly hope that never happens. So that's the proposal in terms of securities. So instead of the 100% value of 50,000 letter of credit and a performance bond. Development charges, the developers requested development charge credits for any work that would normally be funded through development charges. So the thinking there is that because there's work being done in the right of way, and there's you know, there's some improvements to the road cross section on the south side of the road in connection to the active transportation network, that there might be some consideration for development charges credits. The town does have a local servicing policy in effect. It was included with the development charges background study in 2016. In staff's review, we've determined that it doesn't appear that any of the works on site or off site are eligible for development charges credits. They're very specific cutoffs for what's considered developer responsibility and what would be funded through development charges. And reviewed that with the director, and so that's where we've landed on that. So we're not recommending any development charges credits in that regard. Deferral of payment of development charges. So that's been, I believe that went to development and works. We don't have any concerns with that. The deferral is to the full building permit. Can't get occupancy without a full building permit. So, I don't really have any concerns with that. Certainly recommending that be supported. Just in regards to a couple other details. So an early servicing agreement, I'm fully anticipating that we can get these additional details dealt with in a matter of weeks. I don't think it's going to take much longer to iron out these details. But if the applicant did want to go ahead with some work in advance of the site plan agreement being finalized, that could proceed under the terms of an early servicing agreement. With some limited security, about $50,000, and be, of course, at the developer's risk. And then just for council's information, so that this is not related to the site plan approval application. It does not inform our recommendations on this file. It's completely separate. It's related to financing of the project. The applicant has submitted consent applications to sever the property into 4 different lots. If I'm not mistaken, Don, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's 3 plus 1. And just very simply, it's for financing purposes. It's lenders, of course, are looking to minimize risk when at all possible. And so to kind of break up the development a little bit for individual lenders. That's what those consent applications are for. So that's just for council's information. That is proceeding. We have the applications. They will be proceeding to the Committee of Adjustment and approved at that level. And we'll deal with any zoning issues through that process. So I think that's it. So yeah, we're dealing with a few outstanding matters. I think I've addressed them all. We're going to be looking for legal opinion on the performance bond, similar to what we did with Hunter Gate. And other than that, and those comments, we are recommending that this be provisionally approved, subject to cleaning up a few additional details. And those being my comments, I'd be happy to answer any questions from council at this time.
Okay. Any questions, council? Revimo, and then Councillor Sedney.
Yes, thank you to Planner Withers. The term in the letter from Barnett Boulevard Corporation talks about a rolling line of credit. Is that consistent, or is there a mutual understanding of what that means to you and to the agreement and to the applicant? The first paragraph in their letter talks about it's called a rolling line of credit, and I think rolling security, sorry. So is that consistent, that explanation in that point number 1, is that consistent with what's in the agreement? To my mind, it is, but I wanted to make sure everybody has the same language.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mayor Eadie. Yes, there's a mutual understanding of what that means. Essentially, it's not tied to any specific work. So traditionally, we retain 100% securities. We refund them throughout the project as works are completed, and specific securities are tied to specific works. So when they're done, they get that money back. For the rolling letter of credit, we hold on to it indefinitely until the project is completed. And then once it is completed and all landscaping associated with that, then they get the money back.
Councillor Sedney.
I guess my it's more of a comment, maybe question, but And I don't want it misunderstood. I'm extremely happy that we're moving forward with this, and I'm very happy that, you know, Lupines is coming to Renfrew, and that's fantastic. The one concern I do have is, are we setting a precedence for future development by doing this? And where did the $50,000 come? Like, where did that number come from? If we were talking like in the million to go to 50,000, there's a big difference there. So I just want to make sure that in future developers come to town as we grow and stuff like that, where are we setting ourselves now for this? And that's why I don't want to misunderstand that I'm very happy they're coming. I just want to make sure that what are we doing as a municipality by setting a precedent?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Sidney, and through you, Mayor Eadie. I just saw Director Aslan turn his camera on there, so I think he might have a couple of words. But we had been discussing $50,000 as a number as part of a pre-servicing agreement, and really it's enough money to fill in holes and cap services on site and anything that's not done. The performance bond is going to be the lion's share of our security on this project. So in the event that any works are not completed, it's effectively an insurance policy that allows us to get money to complete these works. So I'll turn it over to Director Aslan in case he has anything else to add.
Yeah, and it's so welcome to the Lupine Group. They have been a pleasure to deal with, Francis and Don. This has been done before with the subdivision, the Hunter Gate subdivision. We've entertained and we've actually held bonds for the security related to the development. So the rolling $50,000 would be sort of in excess of what we're holding for Hunter Gate. I guess the principle comes from the early servicing agreement where we hold $50,000 and in the early servicing agreement without any bonding, and we allow them to proceed, but they aren't able with the $50,000 to get building permits because registration hasn't happened. So in this case, we do hold the $50,000 letter of credit, which is like cash in the municipality's hands. And we also have the bond, which has been typically used in Hunter Gate subdivision. So I'd say that this is a bit in excess of where Hunter Gate's securities have been. So it's not setting a precedent in any negative fashion, but it just acknowledges that there's several phases to this very large development, and I think it shows good faith on behalf of the developer that they're committing and proposing to advance these future phases in a timely manner. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it was more of an educational question towards the public if they're wondering where this is coming from. I'm very happy they're coming, and I welcome them to town. I want to make sure people understand that what all of this, and I don't want to minimize or maximize planner's job, but there is a lot of jargon when it comes to planning and all of these things. So I just want to make sure that people understand that what we are doing is in the best interest of the town and supporting Lupines as well. So thank you.
No, that's exactly. And this project is probably one of the larger apartment type projects that we've dealt with. It's very complex as far as the infrastructure, and the engineers have done a lot of planning. We are bringing it forward with this provision that we kind of clean up the details just to kind of expedite the details. Aren't any deal breakers. It's not going to change the nature of the infrastructure that's required. It's just tightening up the design a little bit and providing, crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and we're asking for council to give staff that authority just to clean things up prior to registration. So we appreciate council's confidence in staff.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other comments? Reid Emo, and then Councillor Hines.
Yes, so the 3+1 I'm familiar with, and that's good. I'm glad that's a way of ensuring that it proceeds. The other piece, and I've sort of forgotten it, so I was fumbling around trying to get it, was around the and I can't remember the term used, planner, some pre-work at the risk of the developer. I'm glad to see that that's a tool that that we can employ and will employ if necessary. Also, the final thing was I'm comfortable with it going forward with this kind of a mechanism for backfilling some of the, what could be described as minor changes. They're not, council is very risk averse on a regular basis, but there's no risk associated with these details to the municipality or the corporation or any difficulties within the Planning Act or provincial policy statement. So I think it makes sense to go forward with this. And again, thank you to Director Aslan and Mr. Withers, and then also to Lepine. As has been noted, this is a very quick timeline. And, I think it speaks to professionalism of both parties to be able to sit down, be prepared, and make decisions quickly. So thank you for this, and I'm quite comfortable supporting it as presented in the plans in the report this evening.
Appreciate it.
Councillor Hines.
Yeah, I just want to say what an exciting time to have this coming to council. I know that many of the citizens are excited, and I'm sure you will have your first building filled in no time. And I do want to say to Planner Withers and Director Aslan, thank you very much for such a detailed report, and certainly for reviewing each level that it has to go through, whether it's the provincial planning needs or the county. You've done a great job on that and well explained, and I feel comfortable that we do have set in place securities to protect the town, and that's utmost to us, but I have the utmost confidence in the Lepine Group. You've been excellent to deal with this far. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from council? Any comments from Mr. Lepine or Mr. Schultz?
Okay, let's talk first about what the important hiccup I see in this is the bonding. Lepine does not have bonding capacity. We're not as a general contractor, we're as a home builder. Or subcontractors, in this case Kavanaugh, do have the capacity to bond. Okay? So if the bond has to be issued by me, I'm going to have a problem, because that's the same thing as asking me a letter of credit for $1 million. And originally we were talking about bonding the works that would be on the municipal right of way, not the whole site. The whole site, when we talk about the securities, why we're putting securities by a municipal government against the work the developer does, the work that we are doing benefits who really? The development. If I don't have the sewers and the water and the road, what's the use of me of putting up a building? So I need all these infrastructure to actually make my piece of real estate worth 2 cents. So I have all the vested interest to finish the job and do it properly. In general, the security should cover any little, let's say, deficiencies or landscaping issue, minor stuff. But the bulk of it, when we're talking $1 million of work, 3/4 of that are for pipes underground and things like that. They're mass excavation work. They have to get done. They will be done properly. There is absolutely no risk in that, because if it doesn't happen, there is no building. You don't have to issue a permit, and there's not going to be any occupancy. So who in his right mind would invest millions of dollars in building something and not have the proper infrastructure? So back to the bonding. Originally, the intent was to bond the public domain, not the private domain. And in this scenario of this project, the vast majority of the work are inside my property. There's, and in phase one, there's $400,000 roughly on the public domain, and there's $600,000 in the private domain. And that gets a lot worse going forward, because phase 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the bulk of it is all on the private domain. So, and it's going to be another $4 million. So now I'm going to have to dish out the guarantee for $4 million. It adds up. Now, when I have to cash collateralize letters of credit, that's like taking $4 million and parking it in a bank account so I can issue you guys a letter of credit. Meanwhile, I need $4 million to pay the contractor. So that now I'm at $8 million. So that doesn't fly. So that's why originally we came up with this bonding mechanism, which is more like buying an insurance policy, which my excavation contractors, basically my big sub-trades have these kinds of insurance policies when they bid on government jobs. On private jobs, very seldomly do builders take bonds, because who pays the bond? The contractor will give me a bond, but I'll have to pay for it. So it's an extra cost. In this case, usually they for $4 million, it's $40,000 a year. Okay, so if this thing drags on for 2-3 years, well, it's 80,000, 120,000 more. But the contractor has the capacity to issue the bond because he's been in his career, in his business. You need to be like 10, 20 years in registering with an insurance company to have bonds. In my situation, we never need bonds, really. We need letters of credit for smaller amounts usually. But letters of credit, I can only get them from the bankers once he registers a mortgage on title. And we're talking about doing severances for this property so that the bankers can register their collateral on the proper lots, not on all 4 lots, because we're not building all 4 lots. And if I have a different banker on lot 2 or lot 3, I want to have the banker secured on a certain lot, not on another lot. So that's why we're getting it subdivided. And eventually also, as construction of a certain phase is finished and completed, maybe it gets refinanced as a mortgage, which is might be a different lender than the original lender who did the construction loan. But back to the bond again, could we contemplate to get Kavanaugh to issue the bond and name the city as co-insured? The same thing as the owners are co-insured, a bit like an insurance policy, because at the end of the day, that's what it is, and that's where it comes from, an insurance company.
Okay, Director Aslan?
Yes, and certainly that's why we have the provision in there. We have never entertained taking a bond directly from a contractor of a developer. So we have committed in this report to consult our lawyer, our municipal lawyer, and get an opinion to see how we would do that and how enforceable it is. We have done a review of the securities for developments for on-site works and off-site works of other communities, and we'll certainly entertain to work with you. Obviously, as staff, we only have certain authorities, but we will work with you through our legal opinion and share that with you. And if we still are at a different point, then we may need to come back to council to address that specific issue. But certainly at this stage, we understand that you're requesting a bond. We did have a conversation with your team and indicated that we could probably work through that issue. So that's, I think, what we're intending to do. I don't think that issue can be resolved tonight, seeing we just did receive the letter just a couple days ago. So we're trying to deal with it as efficiently as we can, and we do need some legal opinion from the municipality's perspective to be able to commit to a bond in a form. So we've left it open to consult our lawyers to get a legal opinion on the nature, and that the bond would have to be acceptable in a form that's acceptable to the treasurer as well.
Okay. I guess then, as we sit here right now, we need to work on what we have in front of us so this project can keep moving. And as the Director Aslan said, if there's other details that we can, that staff and yourselves can work with Mr. Lapine, I think that's, I think everybody at this table would be open to that. I know I certainly am. I see by the nods, et cetera, it seems that's the consensus around the table. So having said all that, again, I want to thank you very much for making your presentation tonight. Very good. And good report from our staff as well. And I think we I think we have a good partnership moving ahead here, and I'm looking forward to results that keeps everybody happy as much as possible. Thanks. So thank you very much. Okay, we've had a mover and a seconder. All in favor of the report? Carried. Thank you. Okay. The bylaw 63/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a site plan agreement with 475 Barnett Boulevard Incorporated in relation to the property located at 475 Barnett Boulevard, roll number 4748-000-020-15550. Be read a first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Over, please. Councillor Sidney, second by Councillor Hines. Again, any questions or comments at this time? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried. The bylaw 63/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute a site plan agreement with 475 Barnett Boulevard Incorporated in relation to the property located at 475 Barnett Boulevard, roll number 4748-000-020-15550. Be read a third time and be passed. Over, please. Revimo, second by Councillor Sidney. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're moving ahead with the project. It's great, thank you. So again, thank you very much, Mr. Levine and Mr. Schultz. We're looking forward to seeing this shortly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next motion. The director asked to appear before council to provide updates on the following items: the O'Brien Road Commercial Development, Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review, and Rogers Communication Town Proposal. Over, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Hines. Last director asked him to make his report, please.
Hey, thank you very much. There was some questions that were asked regarding a couple of projects, and we're here to provide a bit of an update on those projects. So, with respect to the O'Brien Road Commercial Development, the development group has been working with the municipality through pre-consultations and working on their site plan concepts. They have not yet got to a position of submitting any kind of site plan approval application or any kind of site plan or planning applications for advancing. They are having some struggles when they evaluate the nature of the traffic. There's so much provincial traffic and traffic on O'Brien Road that they're having difficulties making the turning movements work without the number of conflicts. So the town has initiated some discussion about the MTO Connecting Link intake number 6, which could be a project that would put some improvements or develop a project to improve the section of road from Gillen Road to Mask on O'Brien. And that may very well provide some solutions that would allow these developments to proceed by managing the traffic a little different through that section. So that's kind of where it lies. It's the town may be in the very, very near future advancing an application for MTO Connecting Link funding with council support and for this intake number 6. And that application is due November 6th of 2020. So I guess council does need to entertain whether or not the municipality is going to apply for funding for that stretch, which is pretty much the next Connecting Link funding priority as we laid out in our plans many years ago. So is there any question on the O'Brien Road development prior to me jumping to the next one?
Revimo. You're on mute, Revimo.
Yeah, I was just chasing my cursor around. Thanks. Thank you for this. And I fully endorse the idea of getting an application in for the Connecting Link project. And I think I understood from a previous email that there was going to be possibility of that including a traffic study as part of that. And I was wondering, is the traffic study or is it more of a transportation study or transportation master plan? Because I have some questions about, Wrangler Street and Innovation Drive and Hall Avenue, that connection, and Barnett to Mask and Innovation and Whitten, maybe Booth or McGarry from Innovation to Whitten and Gillen to move some of the traffic through that area. I think as 17 becomes 417, we're going to have some significant traffic challenges along that corridor, the O'Brien corridor, and I think we have to at the same time look at how we're going to relieve it. So that's been my question, not so much the Connecting Link money and not the redesign of O'Brien or the relief, but more the relief for O'Brien is, I think we have to accelerate our thinking about how we're going to relieve some of the traffic on there to get it down into the other parts of our town, whether it's for people returning home from other places or whether it's visitors coming in or whether it's commerce coming in. So those are the questions I have about the O'Brien development. I'm glad there's people wanting to do it. I just recognize there will be traffic issues, not just servicing the O'Brien corridor itself, but servicing the whole town because it's a pretty significant thoroughfare. So that's what my questions are about.
Okay, and tonight you'll see in the development of works notes that we have entertained or set aside a need to do an overall transportation study. Back in my early days when I was young and had most of my hair, we did propose doing a transportation master plan, and we could never really find the funds at that time to complete the overall master plan. In this corridor, we have completed the Hall Avenue, the environmental assessment, which took a very good detailed look at the O'Brien Road corridor as it relates to the Hall Avenue extension. And I know there was milestones that were set that would trigger the extension of Hall Avenue, and that would provide some relief to the O'Brien Road corridor. So it has been studied to some extent. This MTO Connecting Link funding application will not be, sort of a transportation master plan would take probably 2 years to do. So we're looking for more interim improvements to the corridor to allow it to function for the next 10 to 15 years. I think the master plan would look at longer timeframes than that, but there certainly is a need to do a higher level of planning for the transportation system, especially seeing the extent of growth that we're looking at having an accelerated rate of growth. And also it's probably worth pulling out the Hall Avenue environmental assessment and reviewing that with council, because there was really good information in that study as well.
Okay. Any other questions on that subject? Revimo.
No, and I agree. I read the Hall Avenue environmental assessment. That was one of the first things I think you gave to me. And I took a tour through it. And I agree. The recommendations and the observations in it were bang on in terms of the needs. So as I said, I'm supportive of the idea generally of application for Connecting Link on O'Brien Road.
Okay. There's no further questions. I'll move on to the second item.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the second item was the comprehensive zoning bylaw, and I'm not sure if Planner Withers is still with us. Are you still there, Planner Withers? And if not, okay, well, there he is. So the work program for 2020-21 included developing a new comprehensive zoning bylaw, and we've been working with the County of Renfrew with their resources to determine how we are going to deliver the zoning bylaw review. Planner Withers has suggested that they take a more active role in the development of the zoning bylaw amendment and the bylaw review. And he has some timeframes that sort of span from sort of next month into the spring. So would you be able to just quickly review sort of the work program in a very at the 1,000-foot level, Eric?
Absolutely. Thank you. And just through you, Mayor Eadie. So the zoning bylaw review is it's required every time you update your official plan, which is required under the Planning Act every 5 years. You have with the Planning Act says that your zoning bylaw, which implements your official plan, needs to be updated as well. Typically, that's done within a 3-year period. So that 3 years brings us to the beginning of 2021. The county has indicated that they are not too concerned about a specific day of the year that it has to be adopted by. Their preference is to to take our time. I think Charles Cheeseman, his comments are to me were that most municipalities have zoning bylaws that are 10 or 15, 20 years old anyway. They're not too concerned about the timing. So we're looking at having a draft bylaw for council and committee review in January of next year. We're hoping to get the draft reviewed at the staff level and working with the county to incorporate county interests as appropriate. So the county's got a new official plan. I don't anticipate many changes resulting from this. This is a conformity exercise. We're not proposing a brand new zoning bylaw. The bylaw works by and large. Had no negative comments about the framework of the bylaw. It's a county framework and it works well. It's pretty consistent with adjacent municipalities, which you want, because you'll have developers that are on one side of a municipal boundary on one project and the other one, and it's a completely different universe, and they don't like that at all. So some predictability is good. So we're looking at any updates that are required to conform to any legislation that's been updated since the zoning bylaw was put into place to conform with the new official plan. Any amendments required that I just noticed in working with it. Obviously, it's only been just over a year, but I've already noticed a few things that could warrant some touching up. I think a big one, and that's a priority for me, is making sure a microbrewery can come to town if and when they choose to do so. And our zoning, the definition of an eating establishment doesn't include the manufacturing or the preparation of drinks. So that needs to be included. That is priority 1 in my mind for the eating establishment side of life. So I would just things like that. So I'm not anticipating or anything earth shattering here. We're not looking at any site specific amendments unless there's a conflict with the official plan, in which case we'll probably recommend council consider it. But changing the zoning on the schedule tends to be a little touchy, but where there's a pretty obvious conflict, I think we need to look at it. A good example would have been the Lisgar zoning where it was residential and designated industrial. So obviously that ruffles a bit of feathers, but something that we should maybe look at in the event that there are any other conflicts of that nature that exists. So that's the general work plan. It would kind of put us to kind of end of Q1, beginning of Q2 for adoption. For the public meeting, it would be kind of Q1, end of Q1 for the public meeting and open house, and then the adoption would be second quarter. So that's kind of what we're looking at. It was very, good news to hear that the county is not too hung up on timelines. They're actually in the process of updating their updated official plan because they've recently received delegated approval authority for their own amendments. So they're going through that exercise of kind of making a few changes to it, and we'll see what they come out with at the other side. I think that's it.
Okay, any questions on that? Revimo.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Just a couple of really quick questions. Active transportation. We've had a couple of our projects where we've gone out and put, significant pathways down the sides of our streets. Is that something that'll be reflected in a general statement or at least a definition in the zoning bylaw, and an expectation with new developments to link into the plan? Like, will we have an overlay of how we'd like it to develop, and then hope that we can hook in some newer developments into that as well? Is that something, or is that a policy we'd have to develop?
Yeah, thank you, Revimo, and through you, Mayor Eadie. That is an official plan policy. We do have language to that effect in our official plan. But if we wanted to be firm on things like active transportation connections, I think it's really, really important when you have larger subdivisions to make sure you have those little penetrations mid-block that for pedestrians to be able to get to other streets and parkland where appropriate. And actually, just looking at Hunter Gate, because that's moving forward as well, the next phase of it. And we did actually provide for that from Hall down to Otter Ridge and through to the small bit of parkland between Otter Ridge and Elk. So those kind of penetrations are really important. Making sure we have our active transportation system. If council wants to look at kind of beefing that up, I would definitely consider doing that the next official plan review. I think it's something we can require anyway with council support, but certainly we can look at that. But there is active transportation policies in the official plan.
Yeah, yes, and there's also a definition in the zoning bylaw on the preamble under definitions that probably should be a little better expanded upon, because it doesn't give any dimensions, in terms of to match up, and it doesn't, there's no expectation. And if I might, I just have a couple things, Your Worship. I really like the pre-servicing agreement that you were talking about with Lupine. I hope that that's something you can add as a schedule, or however we do that. Pre-consultation, is that something where we include that in the zoning bylaw as a definition and then develop a policy? And the urban design manual from the Canadian Institute of Planners, they have it talks about look, and it talks about being pedestrian and bike friendly and a bunch of other things. Like I've seen a couple of zoning bylaws where that's an accompanying document. I'm thinking specifically of I think Peterborough and Blue Mountain have those. I've had a look at their zoning bylaws in the last few years for any number of reasons, and Caledon has some neat stuff as well. And I'm curious about, do we have growth zones or individual districts? I'm thinking specifically of Mason. We're investing a lot of money in the next little while on Stewart Street with the idea that Mason is, going to come forward. So I'm wondering, is there a way of ensuring that we can encourage that or show some forethought by including it in zoning with some kind of a designation that's different, and Mike, just one more second, and then a couple other areas as well, like in terms of when I talked about McGarry out to Gillen or out to Whitten, or Barnett out to Gillen, or Mason, and the block of land from Opeongo over to Ivy, like are those areas that we can say, okay, we're going to start pushing in that way, and then also that ties into our active transportation as well as our developments. Those are the kinds of things. Do we have districts, I guess?
Yes, and those are all very good points through the mayor. If you look at the development of the official plan, they do anticipate specific growth areas, and they have them as identified as designated growth areas. Now, in developing the official plan, that sort of sets the big framework as to where you see the development happening. There are restrictions in the identification of lands that you cannot identify too much land for development that exceeds the expected population growth in your community, because that's not really good planning if you're just trying to look at all the lands and saying their potential, they're able to be developed at any time. There's usually in a community, there's a certain kind of flow of development and a logical sense of where properties were developed. So we do have official plan that sort of dictates where those developments are anticipated, and the zoning bylaw is sort of built to support those. I'd say in addition, we have taken steps to actually do a master servicing plan that identifies what the servicing would be for any of those areas that are designated growth areas. And then we tie that as well into other municipal documents like the Development Charges bylaws and the Development Charges Act, where there's larger core infrastructure that's required to service these specific growth areas. And then we make sure that that there's some generation of revenue through the development charges process to fund things like pump stations, large connecting water mains, transportation corridors, even to do studies like the official plan reviews, the zoning bylaw reviews, the master plan updates. So there are a lot of documents that do speak to the things you are alluding to, that there is a logical plan for development. We're in the process now of reviewing that once again in our development charges bylaw. And I know we have a series of studies that we're recommending. Again, in the transportation master plan is being proposed, and perhaps Councillor Koulos will speak to it when he reviews the notes. But there is a vision. I think what's changing now is that the growth projections from 10 years ago or 5 years ago, we're trying to look at them and saying, is the Highway 417 expansion going to change that growth projection? Right? You can look at the history of growth in the community, and it may not reflect the projected growth with these new influences. Like, the Lepine development is a great example where we have developers now looking at Renfrew to actively develop projects at perhaps a much faster rate. We have COVID, which may be drawing people out of the urban centers into the rural. And the challenge of the municipality, the council and the staff are to make sure that we understand how the community is going to grow in an orderly fashion, and have all the technical work done to support the recommendations that are going to move forward. So the town, in summary, the town does have a lot of work to support what you're speaking of, and I guess it could always do more, and things are always changing with the community growth, and certainly we'll commit to keeping engaged in the type of development that's occurring in the rate, and try to stay ahead of it on behalf of council and make you a part of that as well.
Okay, any further questions? Vivimo.
Sorry. And again, just, the idea of 100-year storms and drainage and tree canopies. These are just notes I've been making over the last 4 or 5 years. And then also, when I look at the definition for home occupation, there is, and I can't remember what a zoning bylaw I saw it in, where they split home occupation out. In our definition of home occupation, it's got what I'll loosely call workshops included, but in other zoning bylaws, they've split that out and made it a workshop where it's a trades oriented occupation. And they've also split out home offices and home businesses. And so those are the kinds of things that, I'm curious about. And then also shipping containers. There are people in some of the larger urban centers that are actually building homes out of shipping containers. There's pop-up shipping container, almost like a large yard sale where they open up small micro businesses in them, whether temporarily or for seasons or for a couple of years. And so those are the kinds of things I think, I'm only bringing them forward because I'm aware of those as trends. And then are planning strips the same as buffer strips? Just stuff like that. That kind of language just drives me nuts. So anyway, those are the points. And the last thing I'd suggest to you is the districts concept. The city of Peterborough's plan, where they have a zoning bylaw, but they also have districts. They have 300 districts. Their city is divided up into, I think, 300 or 369. And so they have different criteria for each one that's quite interesting. And there's documents that go along with it, diagrams and stuff like that. So anyway, those are the comments that I can offer at this point.
Is there any further questions on that subject? Okay, hearing none, then go on to the Rogers Communication, if you don't mind.
Okay, no, I don't mind. Thanks, Mayor Reedy. So the Rogers Communication Tower, just a little bit of the history. Agents for Rogers Communication, Land Squared, had worked with the Renfrew Fairgrounds to propose a location for a new tower on behalf of Rogers. Now, the approval authority for the towers is the Federal Innovation, Science and Economic Development Department. And part of the process for approval of a tower is to seek municipal support for a proposed location. So the applicant, Land Squared, had approached the town on the fairground site and looked to, and I guess part of the process as well in the application is to provide notice of this tower, that a tower is being proposed. So notice had been issued in the local paper, and it drew out a public delegation to Renfrew Council with respect to concerns over 5G impacts on health. And at that point, council requested additional information from the applicant with regards to the potential health impacts. Okay, the planning committee had considered the application in a little more detail and context with the comments received at council, and looked at some conditions that were of a concern, and perhaps some conditions they thought would begin to address the concerns. Okay, so staff communicated that to those concerns to Land Squared, and Land Squared on behalf of Rogers continue to search for alternate sites, including the County of Renfrew's site at 450 O'Brien Road. Now, I understand that the matter was considered by a committee of the County of Renfrew, and at this point, I think, or I believe that Rogers, due to COVID and Land Squared, have not really been in communication to advance any tower locations, and we haven't heard from them directly as far as consideration of any new sites in Renfrew. And so at some point, if they are considering a new location in Renfrew, I'm certain that they would be advertising notice as per the original application, and they would be approaching council to obtain a municipal letter of support for any new locations. So that's kind of where it's at. The town doesn't really have any application that's pending or that needs any review or work. The applicant had proposed a site, and I think they're looking now for a new site, and have not approached the town with any new considerations of any new sites. And just nod your head, Eric, if that's correct information. Okay, so that's kind of an update at this on that issue, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions on that issue? Councilor Hines.
I don't really have any questions on the tower. I do have a comment just at the end that certainly I'm like to thank Director Aslan and Planner Withers for providing this great detailed information on this. It's good to have all of council with all of the same information on the same page. And as you can tell from the questions and the suggestions, there's quite a lot of information on each one of these topics. I know that the opportunity does present itself when the minutes of the development and works and the minutes of the planning are presented, and we are somewhat briefly highlighting all of these things that those various committees. Sorry, I'll just have to wait till the 8 TVs get by. Anyway, I mean, it's great for us to have all of that background information, and certainly Rebimon, you provided lots of food for thought in regard to the zoning bylaws. So really appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Planner Withers.
Yes, thank you, Mary. Just if I may, just with respect to the zoning bylaw review, if any member of council has anything they'd like us to look at through this, again, understanding that the scope of it is it's a comprehensive review. We're looking at conformity with the official plan. A lot of we have to be appreciative of a lot of the issues that we're talking about are, that we've talked about tonight. A lot of them are policy matters. The official plan deals with them. There's going to be a, kind of a nuance between what's a policy issue and what's appropriate to deal with through zoning. The really important thing to keep in mind is that zoning deals with the physical characteristics of in terms of numbers, of what a building, the performance standards of a building. We can't deal with color. We can't deal with trees. We can't deal with cladding materials, things like that. That's really, we can look at doing urban design guidelines. Those really, I have a little bit of experience with them in the town of Niagara on the Lake. We had a lot of them, and they are a study unto themselves. We really should look at getting, if we want to pursue that, look at getting, retaining an urban design consultant to provide us with a good report, a good document on it. And then we would look at adopting those as a policy, as an appendix to the official plan. And then they would be required to be implemented. The challenge becomes if you adopt them through zoning, they become applicable law through the building permit, and they must be adhered to the detail. So there's no flexibility in zoning. It is very, very rigid. It's a very rigid instrument. So things like urban design, it's better through the official plan. So, but certainly, I guess the take home there is that if there's anything that council would like to look at, any council member, certainly provide that, preferably, in writing, it would be great, so that we can include it, in a table to council when we're looking at the different issues. We can certainly go through them at the staff level and provide council with hopefully some thorough information on them. So. Yeah, it's a good exercise. We need to look at the documents we have in place because they need to work. There's nothing worse than a zoning bylaw that you can't implement. It's just brutal. So, and fortunately, we have a very good one. I haven't walked in here and been like, this is unreal. Like we can't work through this. We can't work with this. It's not like that. So hopefully, just a few things we need to clean up. And we'll get that going. So.
Ready, Rebimon.
Oh, yes, thank you. It's nice to know what the timelines are for the work plan. And secondly, can someone remind me, Mr. Withers or Director Aslan, the timelines for the zoning bylaw itself? Once it's proclaimed, is it a 10-year out with a 5-year review, or is it a 15-year out with a 10-year review? There were so many things floated around. I can't remember what the actual new regs are.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just through you, Mary. You just so it's every 5 years. So the zoning bylaw has to be reviewed within 3 years of a new official plan. So it's the official plan that dictates it. So we did we did not do an entirely new official plan. We did an official plan review, which is most common, I'm going to say. And we amended the official plan. So we have a 5-year turnaround on that. And so we have a 5-year turnaround on our zoning. If you adopt a new official plan, so if next time we do official plan review, we adopt a new official plan, which you can use the same document you have, but if you repeal it and adopt it as a new official plan, it meets the test of being a new official plan, and you have all of a sudden have a 10-year cycle. Which I got to be honest with you, unless there's big problems with the official plan, if you have a 5-year cycle, you're almost constantly reviewing your official plan. That's just been the experience of a lot of municipalities. So if you can get a 10-year cycle, that's a little bit better, and then amend it as you need to. But yeah. Thank you.
Okay. There's no more questions. All in favor? Carried. I think we've lost Councillor Sidney, it looks like. I don't see him on screen. Okay.
Maybe we'll get off and he'll pop up.
Councillor Sidney had to leave the meeting actually at 8:19 due to issues that just came up, important issue.
Okay. Okay, the next motion, the Kirk Bulmer's report dated September the 18th, 2020, concerning upgrades to create safe meeting spaces and to accommodate a hybrid meeting model be received. And further, the Brantford Town Council approved proceeding with upgrades to the council chambers at a secondary meeting location at a cost to an upset limit of $80,000 to address necessary adaptations due to COVID-19 physical separation requirements and to implement an audio-video system to improve the town's capacity to live stream meetings and to have hybrid meetings when warranted. And further, that the cost of these upgrades be financed from the moderation funding. Over, please. Councillor Cool, second by Reeve Amo. Turn it over to Kirk Bulmer for his report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Eady, members of council. So this report before you, and I know I touched on it during our procedural bylaw amendments that were required to allow for electronic meeting participation in the aftermath of the provincial legislative changes that do allow for it. While this report comes, at this time, it's driven by COVID-19 and the significantly changed ways that we find ourselves doing business in. It's actually an item that has been talked about, or at least been considered certainly at the staff level for many years, and it addresses a need in our own council chambers to have an audio visual system that addresses participation of people that may be in attendance. It addresses their ability to live stream, our ability to record, and it would be something that we would eventually had planned to build into a permanent council chambers if and when that day presents itself to us. But with the COVID-19 and the changing environment we find ourselves in, where we're using on a daily basis platforms like Zoom and Google Meet, we're needing to look at options that allow us to do that in a more, more professional way. And it really comes to light when we start talking about hybrid meetings. And I think hybrid meetings are something that's going to be certainly a way of the future, and something that's going to be required for the foreseeable future, and perhaps I'm not going to say forever, but and a hybrid meeting certainly is when you have a mixture of in-person and electronic participants. In fact, we just staff participated in some leg sessions last week, and there was in-person and electronic participants, and without the technology, it's a real struggle to first hear each other. The people that are electronically participating don't see the in-person people because there's a lack of cameras. So what the system that's I'm proposing would be a system that would be as portable as possible. It would be a system that we would eventually be able to use in any, again, upgrade to our existing council chambers or to a new room as a permanent council chamber feature. It's a system that's been, is being used and is in the process of being implemented in other local jurisdictions, City of Pembroke, Township of Whitewater Region, the County of Renfrew does use some similar features that's being proposed. And in simple terms, if you could, consider having fixed cameras in meeting places. So all of a sudden the room has the ability, has cameras that can show whoever's in physical presence. It has microphones that would be made available to each in-person participant that feeds into a switcher. It would have a large monitor for those in-person participants to see the electronic participants and to adequately hear them. And then also the technology allows the blend of both into a live stream that that can be sent out to the general public for, again, for transparency purposes. In addition, some contingency for just those in-person meeting room upgrades that may be required, whether it's individual desks or individual desks, partitions, etc. The secondary meeting location I've referenced is the Mattaway Activity Center Hall. I think it probably proves as a good secondary option when we start talking about larger in-person congregations. As you've seen lately, the province has backed up some numbers for private type gatherings and uncontrolled gatherings. We may see that reduced in meeting rooms and in public facilities as well. But when we do start getting more relief, we will have larger attendances, perhaps for different issues. But we're always going to have, due to personal preference or circumstance, we're going to have members or even members of the public that request participation virtually. So this will allow us the tools to do that. So I think it's an important step. The vendor that I have sought pricing from and have worked with, again, is local, City of Pembroke, and has done some significant work with other of our colleagues across the county, and comes with a very good reputation. Part of the transition would be to have a level of service from the consultant to train and to kind of do a handoff, because it can't be managed by a person that's involved in the meeting. It's almost like you need a second person to do the tech side of things. And as you can appreciate, even doing a simple Zoom meeting, there's always technical glitches that happen, whether we want it to happen or expect it to happen or not. So we're again, this is being recommended. There will be I'm not going to say a lengthy transition, but there's certainly ordering, there's setup, and again, the idea would be to have the council chambers as primary. The bulk of the equipment would be portable, and then we'd have some fixed equipment at a secondary location. Mattaway Hall is my suggestion, that we'd be able to transport our equipment in case that we needed to use a larger size room because of physical distance limitations or expected size of in-person attendance. So I think the modernization funding provides a really good source of funding for this. This is an ideal use. Again, it's modernizing our service delivery. And again, it's a measure that we would be dealing with eventually, even absent of COVID, but it's something that's really is really elevated in importance because of the situation we find ourselves in. So I'm and also just I draw your attention to your agendas, and Treasurer O'Reilly had provided an Appendix A for the report. which just shows a summary of modernization funding and the commitments that have made thus far, just so council can have an idea of where that funding envelope is at.
Any questions? Councillor Hines.
Just a question to Clerk Ballmer through you, the mayor. Will this enhance a bit like emergency plan activities at Mattaway when you're out there in the communication? I know we had some issues with the communication before, so is this going to help that a bit? And you know, I mean, to be able to record that. I know that each person that's part of one of those emergency plans, if it should happen, has their own duties to do without any kind of recording. I mean, there's manual recording, but I just wondered if this would enhance that a bit, which adds to the reasoning for it.
But certainly it provides a really good platform and a really good, I guess, proper equipment to conduct hybrid meetings. So in the, you know, taking emergency management as a tool for that, we would, you know, consider in-person attendance at an emergency management exercise or emergency management rollout, and we could engage virtually then with absentee participants and have, you know, a very effective meeting, as opposed to try to do it on individual laptops or devices, or trying to do it with very unsophisticated webcams on a device or a TV. So I think it certainly provides a really good tool for any meeting that is hybrid in nature.
Councillor Evans,
Thank you.
you're on mute.
There you go. Sorry about that. It takes a while to figure out the buttons. We don't actually talk that often. Kim, it's a wonderful presentation and perhaps even an offering to our town. Just a few points. The platform that we're using today, we're obviously all at a distance at multiple points throughout the town. And some of us may not even be, or don't have to be within the country even to participate in this meeting this evening as any others. So it performs this relatively inexpensive platform. We call it Zoom. I'm seeing it, this is a very cost-effective and efficient, I say a relatively efficient. Technology has certainly gifted us this software and solution, relatively recent. And I do expect, since the advent of COVID and more people using remote meetings and such, the platform will also improve. And since this is not costing us, or costing us relatively zero, asking for a $70,000 purchase for audio visual equipment, and also at the same time having to have an extra staffer set up, tear down, and also control all the levers that this system's actually doing for us for nothing. At the end of the day, I fold my laptop down, I'm talking to on a laptop. I might be on a telephone in our next meeting, or maybe at my office. So this system right now, it's almost perfect. It's almost perfect. But what I appreciate out of it is that the cost is nil, and the maintenance cost is nil. So it's a hard sell for me for the price tag that I'm looking at today.
So regardless of where we go with this, we'll still be using a video conferencing platform, likely Zoom, so that won't change. What changes, and I think what you need to appreciate is this, this is working. We're doing a complete virtual meeting. You throw 3 or 4 people that want to meet in person and try to do this meeting with those 3 or 4 people in person, and it all breaks down in our ability to effectively stream and transmit that. So and I said to council back when we did the procedural change, we can easily keep accommodating electronic meetings, and we can find a way to do in-person meetings, but it has to be one or the other with the tools we have right now. If you want to do a hybrid mix, that's out of the question with the tools we have. That's my recommendation. So it's the option available to council is certainly delay any change and continue with electronic meetings, or have 100% attendance at in-person and find a way to do that with space and with other protocols put in place to do so.
Vivimo.
I think what it does is it improves the flow, like, and in fairness to the mayor or any committee chair that tries to lead a committee or council, as soon as you have more than 8 or 10 people, you're looking at a very little screen. I've been chaired a couple of meetings where I've had 40 people, and it's virtually impossible, and it adds probably an hour to an hour-long meeting, just simply because you're flipping through screens to get to people. I think you need the support set up to be able to run the meeting properly, and at some point we will be getting back to in-person meetings, and we need a permanent solution to live stream that stuff, to live stream that information out. I think we've all committed to that in the last election, that we wanted to keep people informed. So this is just the hybrid model as we move back to a full in-person. We're still going to need to get the information out. And so we wouldn't be sitting in to you directly, Councillor Evans, we wouldn't be sitting in chambers with our laptops, talking into our laptops in a big circle, so that it could be sent out when you can set up the cameras to capture it. And it's as simple as, I've been in some of those meetings where it's as simple as just sitting talking because you have the facilities right in front of you. What I suggest to Clerk Ballmer is you may want to talk to MyFM. They do broadcast out of Mattaway, and I know that they've had some concerns and complaints about their ability to push the signal out of there. And I believe Cogeco also had some struggles when they've done some live during the election and other things as well. So there might be some willingness to be a partner, at the very minimum offer some kind of assistance. But I think, to Councillor Evans, I think once you think about this a little further and not think of today, but think of 6 months or a year down the road where we're doing hybrid meetings and in-person meetings, and we still want to get this information out, a better setup is necessary. And in fairness to the mayor, congratulations, he's gone this far. I'm surprised that he's not keeled over out of frustration trying to run a meeting, in this format with a tiny little screen as opposed to a big screen with all the quadrants.
Councillor Hines.
Yeah, would like to ask the clerk, is there not a cost for a Zoom? Do we not have to have some kind of licensing or pay for some type of programming to have the model that we do now? I know the first couple ones are free, but.
Yeah, we do have a paid membership with Zoom that's been upgraded to meet our current needs. I don't want to quote a price. It's not exorbitant. We've been able to accommodate it with an existing budget, operating budget estimates. But there certainly is a cost to what we're doing today. And certainly at the very least, we would want to look at some changes regardless on some devices going forward if we're to remain like this. And as I said earlier, if we're looking at converting or having a council chambers of your own, a dedicated chambers, this would be an upgrade that we'd be looking at regardless of had the pandemic came along. And so this is going to be a product that's going to be able to be transferred, whether it's used in the current location or an alternative location, depending on the future of this building. And so it's certainly a good tool. And I don't know if any members of council have visited other chambers, but where you have dedicated little work areas, you got microphones that only cut in. You can't talk over each other, and that is all blended into sophisticated equipment and puts out a very professional product. Because regardless of pandemic and our need to meet virtually, the trend had moved quickly to people wanting to engage or view, attend virtually, see what council's doing without having to come in person and sit in council chambers. The ability to tune in, if you will, and that's our live stream or our record and post. So it's modernizing what we do, and certainly I can try to give council some added information, and there'll be opportunities for maybe some overview of equipment, obviously, and training prior to rollout.
Any other questions? Okay, just a couple comments on this. I'm in favor of this. I think it's a great way to use that modernization money to start with. But when you go back to the days when we sat in the council chambers, and I had all kinds of complaints over the years that some voices they could hear in the background, some voices they couldn't hear in the background. So we didn't have any kind of a system in place. And if you were sitting in there in the council chambers, we've had some public meetings where the council chambers have been pretty full. The people at the back couldn't hardly hear a word that was going on. Microphones and amplifiers would certainly help solve that problem. So I think it's a useful tool that it would be a great benefit to the general public and the ratepayers down the road, that what we do at our council table will be much more clear and a much better function for them. Going back to some of Reeve Emo's comments, I get every week I get a number of meetings to go to, and done by Zoom. Some I chair, some I don't. But at the end of the day, as soon as you're sitting in this screen, and as soon as you put up, say, a sheet of paper, I lose half the members. You've heard me say it before, like you'll have to talk because I can't see you. And I don't find this a good formula for the long term. It's certainly, Councillor Evans has certainly getting us through the short term of it, and we have very little choice. And I think right now, with what's happening in Ontario, Renfrew County, Ottawa, etc., that we may be in for this for a long time. So I think building in something permanent, to me, that's like a superior system in the way I hear it and see it. So I think it's a given. But again, with everything, there's always a cost associated to it, and but I think this would be well spent money personally. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Koulis.
I'm looking so forward to finishing with this Zoom. It's unbelievable. And now that the second wave has come officially, I don't see that ending anytime soon. But with the departure of Cogeco back about 2 years ago, I'm guessing, there was a lot of people in town that loved to watch the council meetings on television. I didn't realize how many people were still on cable rather than satellite. And with that gone, the council meetings didn't seem to be the same, in the sense that we really didn't have an audience. What we did was all put on paper, and if you wanted to get in touch with what was going on within the town and the council, you had to read it. So I'm a firm believer in this money being spent on this upgrade. I'm hoping that someday we can utilize the rest of our town hall once we get past this pandemic and we move on with our lives, and we can again be on screen for the audience to see that we are actually doing what they elected us to do. and watch us doing it so that we can be accountable for every vote we got. That's what I have to say. Thanks.
And I'm glad you mentioned Cogeco. Sorry, Councilor Evans, I'll get to you in fact. Cogeco, that was where I got a lot of my complaints. People were watching Cogeco and they picked up some voices, but they couldn't pick up other ones. So I think, you know, that was a problem there and a problem in the council chambers as well. Okay, Councilor Evans.
Thank you. I guess my point would be to the urgency of it. The price tag that we're looking at is $80,000. And currently, I'm just looking at YouTube right now, there are 3 members of the public that are currently watching us, as we say, live. So, or streaming, 3. For the last council meeting, 49 views. It doesn't necessarily mean that they watched it entirely, but 49 people clicked in. And the meeting before that, 29, and before that, 24 and 18. So it's not a huge population, although it doesn't take away from what we're trying to achieve. It's just how much is the value of what we're doing? Is it in 6 months now, instead of $80,000 proposition, could it be 40,000? I'm just a little bit shocked at the price of 80K.
I think if we have a really nasty toss-up argument, we can shove the viewership up for the next meeting, Andrew.
Sorry.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
40,000? I'm just a little bit shocked at the price of 80K.
Opposed?
That's YouTube.
I know what that was. I knew what you were doing.
Councilor Evans, I didn't get, are you in favor or opposed?
Not at 80K, no, I opposed.
You're opposed, okay. That was carried. Okay. Let the minutes of the Fire and Emergency Management Committee meeting held September 15th, 2020 be received. Over, please. Councilor Hines, second by Revimo. Turn it over to Councilor Hines for a report.
All right, this was our meeting of September the 15th, 2020 at 2:30 in the afternoon. And we confirmed the minutes that have already been to council of August the 18th. And then we got right into the action report. And actually in the minutes here, it says the action report for July, which unfortunately should read August, and you have the proper report attached. The July one was part of our August 18th minutes. Anyway, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to the Chief, Welsh, to just review that for you very quickly. The department activity report for August 2020. Chief Welsh.
Thank you, Councillor Hines. Through the mayor to the remaining portion of the council that is here. As you may be able to follow through, we had a fairly busy month of August, up slightly from last year's month of August by 5 calls. 2 unauthorized open air burning complaints, which one was actually they both turned out to be educational experiences. One for an individual who was a tenant in a property who had not been made aware of the fact that they required a permit. So that was a chance to bring the bylaw to their attention and have the opportunity to have a conversation with them. And the second one was an interpretation of that bylaw where an individual was doing some cooking on a wood burning appliance, which again was an opportunity for education. 2 fuel spills or leaks within the community. One that came in as a smell of gas, which ended up being unfortunately a leak of gasoline from their vehicle onto their property. So we were able to help mitigate that for them. 12 of the events that we had of those 19 were what we classified as either human perceived emergencies or accidental false alarms. They ranged everything from alarm activations at residents as a result of cooking to individuals' alarms being activated faultily by the weather circumstances that we're dealing with. A couple of calls up to the hospital for issues with their detecting system that was a little sensitive to the humidity, as well as an opportunity to visit the folks at Bonashire Manor where they had an alarm activation as a result of an overheating defrosting unit on a refrigerator. It was actually a good opportunity to prevent a fire in that moment. So although a false alarm, not a fire, it was a predecessor to that. So we also had a couple of motor vehicle collisions and extrication calls, which one was over on Liscar Avenue, which ended up being an individual who managed to sideswipe an air conditioning unit on a home. And no one was injured, but luckily, neither in the house or in the vehicle. So that was a positive element. Our training continues to be at a little bit lower than expected as far as the month of August goes. We're in a preparation period for an upcoming training evolution in October that'll engage the entire department in an incident command exercise that'll help our officers hone their skills in the overall management of our fire scenes with the large number that we have at the turnout of upwards of 17 individuals that they have to manage. Our continued vehicle maintenance and repairs, public education and inspection are obviously down with the result of the COVID circumstances that we're dealing with, having a limited opportunity to engage with our public. We are ramping up for Fire Prevention Week in October and getting some messaging that we're able to deliver based on our current restrictions, and working with our school partners to ensure that we continue to provide the opportunity to educate our young students on the best opportunities for them to avoid any concerns and problems with fire, both at home and at the school. Building repairs and maintenance continue to go on, and our COVID cleaning is a daily activity on a basis to keep our workplace safe. We were in a process, you'll see that we have upwards of 32 hours for fire prevention pre-planning, information gathering. We brought in our swingmen on a schedule where they were going to be attending fire college, but we took the opportunity to gather information about local buildings and both commercial and residential high occupancy dwellings that we have in an effort to create a consistent plan of attack for any calls that we might deal with at those. Better to have a thought about it when it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, nice and sunny, and everybody can have their minds turned to it, than when it's raging out of control in the middle of the evening. So we're in the process of gathering identification about locations for those high risk buildings that we may have. And we're going to develop an individual plan for each one of those as we move forward, identifying the gas shutoffs, the primary entrances, the locations for second and third in vehicles, as well as opportunities for individuals in those structures in those buildings that might have significant needs, and or areas within those that might have storage for dangerous combustible or explosive and hazardous materials that we need to be aware of. So that's where we put the 32 hours to use. As well, you'll see the last line that as of the end of August, we had 40 recreational open air burning permits sold for the year. Last year we had 10, of which those 45 were sold during the month of August, knowing that they were only able to enjoy the opportunity to have that recreational open air burning until December 31st. And all of those individuals paid the full cost associated with that permit inspection of $100. So back to you, Councillor Hines, unless there's any questions.
No questions? I just want to highlight also the assistance to other town departments under the activities. Chief Welsh did inform us that the fire department was working with the recreation department to help them in some of the evenings with close up instead of drawing in people on overtime. So I certainly appreciate that effort between those two departments to work together like that. So moving right along into the rest of the minutes, we looked at the priorities for 2021, and this is a carryover from meeting to meeting that we just address whatever is coming on the forefront, and certainly next year's based on the potential that there is access to the Ontario Fire College, and it's may be available at that time depending on where we're at with COVID. The chief is also working towards 100th anniversary celebrations. Although it's this year, we will be doing that celebration next year because of COVID. And also just want to point out there that the pumper rescue fire truck has been ordered, and the chief actually met with a representative from Fort Garry Fire Truck Company just to go over all of that with them. So that's in the works, and we'll keep council posted on where that's at. In regard to shared public education services, Chief Walsh provided a verbal report from his meeting in the morning with the LEG group. And there are a lot of shared training and public education opportunities that will be there, but we will see that come forward in the report that's coming to council in regard to that. We did have Mike Forche and Jennifer Cherokee join us at the meeting, and they are representatives from the emergency planning. It was an opportunity to meet and speak with Mike. He was actually on Zoom. They were both on Zoom, but it was good for the committee to meet him and hear from him. He's the town employee that has volunteered to take on that the position as backup for the chief. We also received a letter to say that, of course, you know, each year we are to be doing a exercise in regard to the emergency plan, but certainly the deputy minister has recognized that being in COVID and the group that we have here in Renfrew formed and the different plans that have had to take place in regard to COVID is an exercise in itself. And certainly our emergency control group is looking at reviewing what they've done and submitting some best practices and where things could be improved, but certainly with the committee that we have and the mayor providing an update to council all the time, I think it's worked very well. And I mean, it's foreign territory when we're talking about looking after COVID and what each municipality should do and what we should do. So I have to say at this point, hats off to the emergency control group who have spent a lot of time every week on what we're going to do next here in Renfrew and have been very diligent to work on that with all of their other duties that they have to perform. So our next meeting is Tuesday, October the 20th at 2:30 via Zoom. If you want to attend or just be a part of that, feel free to contact the chief and we'll get you connected. Any questions? All right. Oh, you're on mute, Don. That's usually me.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you could all read my lips.
Ah, we can.
Okay, all in favor? Carried.
I knew that's what you're going to ask.
Oh, yeah, well, you know, we've been at this for 2.5 hours.
Yep.
Okay, that the minutes from the Waste Management Committee meeting held August 10th, 2020 be received. Over, please. Reeve Emo, seconded by Councillor Evans. Turn it over to Reeve Emo for his report.
Thank you, Your Worship. We met August the 10th for an electronic meeting. I'll take you down to item number 6. The Ontario Battery Collection and Recycling Program changed from Stewardship Ontario to producer responsibility model at the end of June. And we'd already reported, I think verbally to you about this, that the change is the reimbursement for collection, and it's based on a kilograms shipped versus a reduced hourly rate, which we previously received. Call to Recycle is the program responsible organization for the batteries. And so they've already set up an account with Drainall, who currently collects our household hazardous waste. So we've passed a motion, and it's in the report about signing a contract, and I believe there's a motion and then a report coming on that. And also we gave direction that staff develop a battery recycling and collection program for household batteries. We want to capture those. As you know, there's chemicals that leach out of those should they get into the waste stream and into the ground. And we're in the process of trying to get more information on lead batteries. Those are the ones that are in vehicles. We're not sure what's going on with those yet. We received our amended environmental compliance approval, and it combined all of the previous amendments, and there were some new items requested as well. So we have a bit of a work plan to follow through on the next little while. It's to provide documentation and best practices for sewage sludge, obtain the groundwater rights for the 23 properties within the contamination zone. As you know, we're moving from transitioning from a drilled well model to monitor leachate migration to a offsite to a program that captures it if it does get to the Bon Jour River. So that's new for us, but we have to obtain the water rights for those properties between our boundary and the river, and to set up a reuse center within the next 2 years. So we have 5 years for the contamination zone to be fulfilled, that condition. We also had some discussion about household hazardous waste. And so we're working on determining the additional costs, possible hours of operation and storage requirements for a year-round household hazardous waste depot system. It'll be on a very greatly reduced model. We're just checking in to see whether or not we should be doing it. We will note in next month's report, it'll show that the numbers generated, the gallonage, the liters and the packs are down from last year. So that's going to enter into discussion as well. We have to discuss it with our other partners who help fund it to see if they're interested in paying for it. And I move you to page 3. The top of it was a recommendation that there's a 5-year financial plan for the acquisition of the groundwater rights, which I just mentioned. And we had some comments from the BIA with regards to cardboard collection in the downtown, and that's been addressed recently. Donation bins, nothing else. The priorities, we're pleased to report that the 2020 priorities are on track. Our major items are the recycling contract, data call, and the new ECA have all been finalized, and we're working on some surveys. That's survey levels in the landfill to take a look at phase 4 or 5. So we're not sending out surveys to households or users. Excuse me. And we're looking at building improvements for the equipment shed, I believe new doors and some interior metal to keep it a little warmer. And then tenders for both bin rental and grinding. And we're in the process of putting together our priorities for 2021. And we're tying it to the budget process. Reuse land, the reuse center, land acquisition, and fee sustainability, and we'll have some more to add to it as well. And we took a look at our budget and felt we were in pretty good shape going through this year to date. So with that, Your Worship.
Any questions or comments on this?
Great report.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Carried. That the minutes from the Development and Works Committee meeting held September 8th, 2020 be received. Over, please. Councillor Cooless, second by Councillor Evans. Turn over to Councillor Cooless for his report.
Thank you. At 132 minutes, we accomplished a lot of things on the 8th of September. I'll just touch on a few of them because I'm sure you all have copies in front of you and you want to read along with me. The downtown Renfrew BIA asked about renewing the street lighting program, which we gave them the go-ahead on that. You may recall last year in November when they asked us for our green light on them installing Christmas lights on the poles. We asked them to come to us again in a year's time so we would monitor it over the year, and they have reached an agreement with their supplier that represents less than half of what they paid initially to leave them on year round. So we were very much in favor of that. We've got lots of positive comments about that. We did have a building report from Tom Webster, our CBO. There are some larger building projects that are forthcoming in the very near future. Everything is on budget in that department. Stewart Street reconstruction started, and some underground exploratory work is on the way now. In Forgy Park, the contractor has asked for a closing of the section of the road for some deep sewer work that will be required. Staff's not in favor of the road closure due to emergency access to that end of town. As you know, it's the only in-town bridge crossing. We were working with them to see if they can be closed for a short period of time to allow the underground service installation. So we stay tuned on that one. We don't want to close any more than just a very limited amount of time because of ambulance and fire truck and so on access to that end of town. Empire Ross is nearing completion now. In fact, I think it's pretty much done. Second lift of asphalt was installed there. The Airth Boulevard Award, of course, has been done. We asked for a full depth reconstruction to the county again. We went with hat in hand. That did not work. They are still going to proceed with paying for only a shave and pave as they initially planned, unfortunately. McAndrew is nearing completion too, and the people are very happy with the finished product, although there has been increased traffic on that portion of that dead end, basically, and it ends at the Algonquin Trail and now has been utilized more by ATVs, particularly this time of year. And they access restaurants and so on, gas stations and so on that end of town. But maybe more than people realize now that the road is in such nice shape. So we are proposing a barrier to go up there that would slow some of the traffic through there and only maintain just ATVs and I guess snowmobiles, obviously come December, January, when the conditions are right for that. So we are putting temporary barriers in place like we have on some other parts of the trail to not allow vehicles to get in there, or bigger vehicles for that matter. Water tower award has been done. A project will need to be completed before the winter, and that's ongoing now. Downtown Raglan Street South, the downtown Highway 60 is now complete. Trees and horticulture and that sort of thing has been upgraded. The contractor has been requesting compensation for additional work that they completed, and the town is now working with the consultant and the contractor to settle the claims and for compensation of this project. We have installed our new street signs. They look very nice downtown. They meet the decor very nicely. Bike racks are still being sourced. We had them sourced and they were from overseas, and of course now shipping with the way COVID has affected the world has made it so expensive we can't afford those. It makes no sense really. We are going to find bike racks from a more local supplier in Canada, hopefully sometime very soon, and have them installed before we get into next summer. The town has received notification, and we talked about it earlier tonight. Director Aslan mentioned it about the Connecting Link funding. I can't speak more directly about how important this would be for, particularly for O'Brien Road. If we were to apply for this, it's really a no-brainer. There is no guarantees, of course, that we would even get this money, but we can't get it unless we apply for it. You can't win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. So if you're going to expect to get 90% coverage of reconstruction to the tune of $3 million, would it not make sense to at least apply for it? There is a section of that road from Gillen to Mask that represents a fair amount of commercial traffic. I have become more aware of it lately because my office has moved out that way, and I see the type of traffic that goes by there to the tune of many thousands a day of vehicles, and 18-wheelers that come in and out of town is astronomical. You just wouldn't believe it unless you sat there and watched for a while. And the people that have bought the property that used to be belong to Morris Edie are requesting additional access to their property, and that in that you can't turn into it when you're coming into town. You have to basically come into town, turn around, go back out to turn into the property. So we need to do something in the way of a center turning lane in that portion of highway. We need to remove some of those curbs that were put in many years ago in front of the No Frills gas bar and that sort of thing. So it is, not to spend too much time on this, but it is very important that we look at that very seriously. We have a deadline of it's here somewhere. It's in early November 6th for this application. So I would recommend that we do move on this very, very soon. 8.3 is Blake to June Road. There's a circular road. I think we spoke about this at the last council meeting, but anyway, it is a portion of road that we have been going down June and around and on to Blake with plows. There is a road of sorts there. That is Renfrew County property. We have talked to the county about an encroachment agreement, and they are in agreement to that. That covers that. The swinging bridge has some need for some immediate repairs thanks to a woodpecker. There's a pier cap that is very, very badly damaged. We did see pictures of it at committee level. There's a timber cap that needs to be replaced. It's visibly split in the wood. The bridge is still safe, obviously, but we need to do these repairs. Carrying on, Renfrew Hydro has asked the town for access to our fuel depot at the town garage. Now, Renfrew Hydro buys their fuel currently from another supplier in town. That will end on the 24th of September. That's Thursday. So they're looking for a quick response from us as to whether they could buy fuel from the town of Renfrew. Committee agrees that this shouldn't cause a big problem. They buy fuel, they pick up fuel during business hours, so they don't need access to the property after hours. Like we use it, of course, in the winter and so on, we're in and out of there, but they only need it during business hours. So we are recommending that we approve Renfrew Hydro's access to our fuel and charge them accordingly for it. We did discuss and got prices on the differences between full reconstruction and shave and pave jobs throughout the town on town streets. This has been an ongoing thing, of course, and not to bore you, but we do now know how much money it costs to do a meter of shave and pave as opposed to total reconstruction and putting a base underneath the road that will actually last for a little while. That's our concern with Raglan South when we do it this coming year, in that the county wants us to do a shave and pave, and we know that that's not going to last much more than 8 to 10 years, and it'll be in much the same shape it's in today. We don't want that to happen on some of our residential streets if we can help it. Some will have good infrastructure underneath, good sound base to shave and pave, but many won't. We are going to do a geotechnical study on these streets that we earmark for reconstruction to see what kind of underneath we're dealing with, what kind of base we have for a road. because it makes no sense to shave the asphalt off and find out we're working with clay. You can't lay pavement on top of clay and expect it to last any length of time. We did find that out on McAndrew Street when we tore it up this past year. That it had no base. Basically, it was in bad shape. So we did discuss evaluation of roads and a prioritization of these roads in town, and we will want to sit down with finance to find out how we can and how much money we can access to do as many streets in town as possible, based on a per need basis to, as far as the condition is concerned. Town garage we've discussed. Priority projects. Again, earlier this evening, Director Aston talked about our need for an asset management and a transportation plan, and I firmly believe that's very necessary. In the upcoming years, Renfrew is going to experience a high level of growth for sure. We're seeing it in real estate now in Renfrew. At any given time, there's 4 houses to be bought in Renfrew, and that's all. And when they do come on the market, they last 6 days max, and they're sold. It's astronomical, the people that are moving out of the urban areas and looking for places, and probably most of it being a result of this pandemic, and wanting to get out from living on top of each other and get a backyard and more property to enjoy the outdoors, summer or winter. So we need to do a transportation study for sure. We need to move ahead with this town so that we're ready for that development. I mean, Arnprior saw it and has seen it and is seeing it, and it's been going on there for the last 36 months, big time. We're just on the cusp of it now. We have to improve our intersections with 60 and 132 as major arteries to the Algonquin Park area from Ottawa up 17, the Trans-Canada, and we're going to see a lot of additional traffic. And I don't think at this point in time we could handle it. Moving on to, there is a sanitary sewer replacement due in behind the new OPP station. We have some work to do there. What's there will accommodate the initial Lapine development, but not much more than that, just the initial development. So we need to get that. We need to get our ducks in a row, so to speak, and get that done. I think that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Anything else that is there is pretty self-explanatory. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Hines.
Excellent minutes, Councillor Koulas. The committee sure did accomplish a lot. I just have 4.
Went on mute.
Went on mute, Councillor Hines.
Well, there you go. You missed me saying how great your report was.
Well, thank you very much. Say that again. Oh my goodness.
Your report was great,
Oh,
but
thank
I
you.
will say that the minutes were well done to reflect all of the work that the Development and Works Committee have dealt with. There's a lot there. Anyway, just 4 really quick comments in regard to the lights downtown on the poles. I don't find them to be Christmassy or festive. I find them to be festive, and I've had many people say how majestic it looks and how great it looks. So I'm really pleased that they're staying up. I think when you go away for a couple of days and you come back and you drive down Main Street, you just go, wow, this really looks great. And certainly with the signs up and all of the landscaping done, it does look really great. Just going to, where is that now? McAndrew Avenue. I do think that the town needs to, and maybe through Development and Works could generate something. And maybe it's just a matter of putting it in our flyer that goes out monthly in regard to ATVs and where they can go. I think people really need an update to that. As you know, I had to stop talking, and I don't know who sent the ATV by, but anyway, it did make me stop talking for a few minutes. But it is really loud and it is constant, and I mean, it's great that people are using those to get to gas stations and restaurants and all of that, and you know, getting out at least on them in this time of COVID. But I think it's really important that we do let people know where they can and can't be. As far as the bike racks, I would suggest that we have a lot of steel workplaces in and around Renfrew, and I would hope that that could be sourced out to one of those companies. And I know that that's what your intent is, to probably look more local than anything. And the last question is again on McAndrew, where you just you said about they discovered more than they were anticipating when they dug up the road to pave it. And I'm just wondering if there's anticipated an overrun on that budget for McAndrew.
No, not at this time,
Okay,
Councillor Hines, no.
okay, thank you. Great report.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. Okay, the Renfrew Town Council approves the downtown Renfrew lighting program for 2021, permitting downtown Renfrew BIA to renew the program until December 31st, 2021. Need a mover, please. Councillor Kula, second by Councillor Evans. Any questions or comments on this? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. The Renfrew Town Council approves staff moving forward with the Connecting Link Funding Intake 6 application for road improvement between Gillen Road and Mask Road. Mover, please. Councillor Koulis, second by Councillor Evans. Again, any questions or comments on this? Hearing none. All in favor? Carried. The Environmental Engineering Officer Armstrong report dated September the 17th, 2020, concerning a consumer type portable battery recycling agreement with Call to Recycle Canada Limited Incorporated be received. Mover, please. Revimo, second by Councillor Hines. Revimo, would you like Mr. Armstrong to give a report?
Yes, please.
Okay, Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Eady and Council. Hopefully my internet lasts for the report. It's been spotty tonight. So this report is just recommending a signing agreement with Calder Recycle to allow us to be paid for batteries collected through the household hazardous waste depot at 55 cents per kilogram. As we discussed previously, this program is funded through Stewardship Ontario until June 30th of this year. And signing this contract, after June 30th, battery collection went to a producer responsible model. Signing this contract with Calder Recycle will enable us to continue to be paid for batteries. Calder Recycle, they've been in the battery recycling program before. They were under Stewardship Ontario, so there be no changes in level of service, and battery collection will still continue. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Okay, here, Revimo.
Yeah, just very quickly, there is some education required for staff because it has to be packaged properly. And also, if you look at item 3.4 on page 4, we have to be aware that if anybody shows up and drops off 15 kilograms of batteries, that we have to take their name and number and I guess report them. So you have to be very, so there, it's not as simple as just collecting the money. There is some outlay of time and effort on our behalf as well.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Hines.
Just in regard to what Reeve Iman said, I know
You got frozen on us, Councillor Hines. Okay, I guess we'll have to. There she's
is
back.
that a problem?
You got frozen though.
What's that?
You were frozen on us. We never heard anything.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I missed a little bit of Tyler's saying because it did freeze on me also. I'm just saying that when I worked at Renfrew County Place, the County of Renfrew collected batteries as part of the cleaning contract, I guess, and from all the different offices and the many things that we use them for, calculators, whatever. And would that create a problem? I'm not quite sure how many batteries that would entail to have to be reported, but what is the gist of it being reported? What's the consequence or why?
It's a requirement in the contract, so it's same for tires. If they drop off a certain amount, we have to record addresses. And for tires, it's over 10. For this is over 15, and we'd have to report that at the end of the year. As far as collecting information, it's at the household hazardous waste depot. We already record name and address, phone numbers, and what was dropped off. So it's not really any extra.
Okay.
For the
okay, I just wondered what the gist of it was. Like, are you not allowed to have that many batteries?
No idea.
I'd have to look at the contract in detail to answer that. It's just a reporting mechanism, probably under the regulation.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Chief Welch.
Just a question through you, Mayor Edie, to Tyler. Would a possible explanation for the restriction on numbers associated with those things that are dropped off be an effort to minimize, in the case of batteries, individuals that might be involved in illegal activities as far as using those for illegal drug operations, and with reference to the tires, with someone charging people to take their tires away and then putting that extra money, which is already covered in the purchase of the tires?
Yeah, it could very well be.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the bylaw 65/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement for user consumer type portable battery recycling with Call to Recycle Canada Incorporated. You read it first time and deemed to have been read a second time. Over, please. Emo, seconded by Councillor Hines. Okay, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. The bylaw 65/2020 being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement for used consumer type portable battery recycling with Call to Recycle Canada Incorporated. Be read a third time and be passed. Over, please. Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Hines. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. The Director Aston's report dated September 17, 2020 concerning the vacant maintenance labor position be received. And further, that Renfrew Town Council declare a maintenance labor position to be vacant and authorize the Director of Development Works to advertise, interview, and fill the position. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Cooless. Turn it over to Director Aslam for his report.
Hey, it's been a long night, so I'll try to make this brief. I guess from time to time, our public works staff, there is some turnover. There's one young gentleman who's done excellent work for the town of Renfrew, and he's taken on a position with the county of Renfrew. And we wish him all the best in his new career. Now, the complement of staff that we maintain in public works is geared around sort of the minimum operations during the winter storms and summer and winter operations as well. And we review that from time to time to determine if those staffing levels are adequate and appropriate. And in this case, we're recommending that we do declare this position vacant. And when we hire a new employee, we hire them at the maintenance labor position, which is the entry level. And essentially, they demonstrate through their work ethic and their abilities, what their best function is in the department as time goes on. So at this point, we're suggesting that council authorizes to do the advertisements. We do internal and external advertising. And then recruit and interview and fill this position. So you've seen reports like this come forward in the past as well.
Okay, any questions on this? None? No questions? Okay. The reading what was left is for a minute, I guess. We still have quorum, so all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. For reading what the last motion was carried.
Dinner?
So the minutes from the Renfrew Public Library Board meeting held May 26, 2020 be received. Mover, please. Councillor Evans, seconded by Councillor Cooless. Turn it over to, I guess, Councillor Evans. You want to give us a report?
Thank you. I'll make this very quick. May 26th, that's a very long time ago, but if I can bring our memories back, this was just a few weeks after the COVID somewhat lockdown. The library was affected by the lockdown. It was, the building itself was closed to the public, although the activities of the library still continued. These would be the online services as well as book requests that were taken over the telephone, internet, and I believe their social media site, Facebook. Again, apologize for the minutes being received 5 months after the fact, but nonetheless, they're here right now. Our chief librarian, CAO, attended training sessions held by the Canadian Urban Libraries Council, sorry. And at that council, she was educated on operating her facility under, at the time, phase 1 procedures or circumstances. That was limiting the exposure to her staff as well as members to the public with direct contact. So they initiated these pickup times and slots that a client who was had reserved books from our library, either through the telephone or an online, would have a scheduled time to pick up and then take away their books. Apparently, all of those time slots for pickup and returning of books were filled up quite quickly. So the library was happy that their services were still maintained throughout the original or the onset of COVID. Hotspot policies. These were small devices that were offered to our library free of charge, I believe, for a 2-year term. And they allowed, I believe, up to 10 households. 10 units were given. each unit would allow that household a Wi-Fi connectivity. So without having a Rogers or a Cogeco or Bell service pay at their house, they were gifted this service. And now they're, which has been very popular, now they're fine tuning the rules on how to get these units back into their possession. They're that popular. And if I could speed quickly right then to the activities report. These were activities again held 5 months ago, but the library has kept a very good tradition for the librarians of keeping an awful lot of fun and interesting programs and activities going for our members of the public. I believe also in great news, the town of Horton has also joined the municipality as a partner in our library.
Okay, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay, the library activity report, May, June 2020 be received. Over, please. Councillor Evans, second by Councillor Colas. Again, any questions or comments on this report? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Carried. Okay. The Renfrew Town Council convened in closed session for the following matter pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001. Pursuant to section 239(2)(e) of Municipal Act 2001, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting municipality or local board. More specifically, to allow staff to update on legal matters pertaining to management and operation of the Renfrew Innovation Center, encroachment on town-owned land. Pursuant to section 239(2)(c) of Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. More specifically, to discuss matters pertaining to the sale of town-owned land for residential development purposes. Over, please. Councillor Hines, second by Councillor Evans. We are now in closed session.